In this video, we're going to answer the question, how can I add or subtract mixed numbers? If you remember, a mixed number is like a fraction. It can represent parts that are less than one whole. But when we write a mixed number, it has a whole number part and a fraction part. So I might have 2 and 1/4. That would be a mixed number. Now when I add mixed numbers together, I'm going to add, and let's say I want to add 3 and 2/4. One way to add them together is to add the whole numbers and the fractions separately. So if I look at this, I can see 2 plus 3 equals 5, and 1/4 plus 2/4 equals 3/4. So when I add those mixed numbers together, I'm doing 2 plus 3 equals 5, 1/4 plus 2/4 equals 3/4. That's going to work when we're adding mixed numbers together. We can add those two parts separately. Sometimes when you add fractions together, like maybe 2 and 3/4 plus 2 and 3/4, if you add those together, you would get 4 and 6/4. Now the fraction that I have next to the 4 is actually greater than 1. 6/4 is more than 1 whole. You can leave your answer this way if you'd like, or since we know that 4/4 is equal to 1, your answer would be equal to 5 and 2/4. So we know that because 4/4 is equal to 1, we can add that onto the 5 and we would get 5 and 2/4. This is going to be important as we move on to subtracting fractions. So for my fraction, I might be subtracting, how about 4 and 3/5 minus 1 and 4/5. If I try to subtract this separately, if I try to do 4 minus 1 and 3 minus 4, I'm going to run into a problem. Because if I have 3/5, I'm not going to be able to subtract 4/5. I don't have enough fifths. But what you can do to change 4 and 3/5 into something that you can subtract, we know that 4 is 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 3/5. We can decompose our number that way. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 3/5. We also know that 1 is equal to the same numerator and denominator. That would be 5/5. When I add this back together, I still have the same amount. I have 4 wholes and I have 3/5. But when I add it back, I have 3, 1, 2, 3, and 8/5. Then I can do 3 and 8/5 minus 1 and 4/5. When I subtract that way, I get 3 minus 1 equals 2, and 8/5 minus 4/5 equals 4/5. So that way when I subtract, I'm not ending up with negative amounts of fifths. I'm not trying to do 3/5 minus 4/5. Instead, I'm changing the way that I write my number. Just like 4 and 6/4 is equal to 5 and 2/4. Over here, 4 and 3/5 is equal to 3 and 8/5. If you don't have enough fraction to be able to subtract, you can take the fraction from the whole number. 1 is equal to 5/5. So when you redistribute a fraction that way, that's going to help you add or subtract mixed numbers. So when you add fractions together, if you get a numerator greater than a denominator, you can add 1 to your whole number, and then you can have what's left. Over here, if your numerator is not enough to subtract the other numerator, then you can change one of your 1's into a fraction with the same numerator and denominator. That way, when you subtract, you're able to subtract a greater numerator minus a numerator that's less, and then you can get your final answer. And that is how you can add or subtract mixed numbers.